Okay. First I want to mention that in a matter of Jewish politics, yesterday, purely by coincidence, obviously, it's not planned ahead of time by me, the Rabbinical Council of America, the RCA, decided that any member of this organization, which is an organization of mostly mono-Orthodox rabbis, must sign, must check off a box on their application to join that they affirm, that whoever it is, whatever rabbi is, affirms that it is not a authentic Jewish belief to say that Mashiach will be someone who comes back from the dead, and one is not supposed to believe, according to Judaism, that Mashiach is going to be resurrected. So the obvious reason why they put this in is because they want to exclude any Lubavitchers who believe the Rebbe is still Mashiach. In my opinion, they're making a mistake. It's not necessarily true that Mashiach does not come back from the dead. The Rambam seems to hold that if Mashiach dies in the course of attempting to complete his task, he's not Mashiach. But not that Mashiach doesn't come back from the dead. The Rambam doesn't say that. Also, we have in Hoshanos, we say, right before the end of Hoshanos, we talk about Kol Mevaser, the voice of the harbinger, the person who brings us the news of the redemption. So we say that the Mashiach is coming, Hu David Ba'atzmo, that David himself is Mashiach. David, to the best of our knowledge, is dead. So therefore, David dead, it's very similar. So therefore, it must be that Mashiach theoretically can be from the dead.
But how can you make such an assumption? How is it even logical to assume that?
Is
it because you say David is coming that all of a sudden?
No, but it says it very clearly, very explicitly. I need a sitter to
No, I understand what it says, but the question is, why do you take it as a little shot?
I don't know, take us a little shot, but
who gives the people the right to take us a little shot?
Why shouldn't they?
Because it's self-understood by the Rambam that the Mashiach is not the person who's coming back from the dead.
Why? But the person coming back from the dead is not a human being?
No, he's not.
What is he?
I don't know.
When you come back from the dead, what are you? A zombie?
A zombie, exactly.
Well, you got the wrong religion, my boy. Chayv Kain doesn't mean he's alive.
That's only after Mashiach. That's not pre-Mashiach.
break the rules.
But I don't know that there are any specific rules. What does it say here? It says quite explicitly somewhere around here. Yeah. It says here, Kol tzamach ich tzemach shmo, hu David be'atzmo. So it says in the English here, a voice. A man has sprouted. Tzemach is his name. Tzemach is the name given. One name's given to Mashiach in the Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Tzadik Ches. He is David himself.
In characteristics, in character traits, in looks.
You can say whatever you want, but if somebody believes this line is, if somebody believes that this line is Kipshuto, they're not Bikairis.
No, they're an idiot. They're not.
I didn't ask whether they're an idiot or not. I asked if they're not Bikairis.
But if their intellectual level is so small, that means their opinions mean nothing, and people could just ignore them. Why do we have?
Why does it bother you that David himself is Mashiach? What the heck is going on? Why does this bother you so much?
No, it's Gilgul.
It must be a Gilgul of your Ravam ben Nevat.
That's pretty cool.
What's bother you is that they take that line and say the Rebbe is Mashiach.
What?
They take.
But that's not what the RCA declaration says. The RCA declaration doesn't say I affirm that Lubavitch Rebbe is not Mashiach. Right? They say, I affirm that the Mashiach is not arising from the dead. Who says? It's not so absurd.
Okay, in the Gemara there's a rule that you can only assume that if the Gemara.
What is your agenda here?
It says, I believe there's a rule in the Gemara that says that if a pasuk doesn't say something explicitly, the only thing you could learn out from it is something that's very general. You can't learn something specific out of it, right? So if the Rambam doesn't say anything specifically about Mashiach being reborn from the dead, then you can't assume otherwise.
But the Rambam,
so that would be a big Kiddush.
So we'll say the Rambam doesn't hold that way. So what?
So then nobody holds that way. So you have no proof.
But the Rambam himself says we don't know how these things are going to happen until they happen. For all we know, Mashiach is going to come out of the ground right here. In Or Sameach. Who knows?
No, it sounds like there's going to be a human being that is going to. Yeah, my agenda is this. I'll tell you what's my agenda.
Yeah, okay. What
my
is
agenda
it?
is that people believe that Mashiach is this person who's going to come with a flashlight over his head, and people CNN is going to declare Mashiach is here, and everybody says, "Well, we can stop learning Gemara. We can stop doing what we're doing. We're going to go to Israel. We're going to have a big party." I don't think that's the way it's going to happen, because that's just saying people live our lives. Don't worry about the world. There'll be one guy with a flashlight in his head who's going to come around. And
What's the thing with this flashlight here?
I'm just saying it'll be like everybody will see is Mashiach. That's like a siren type of thing.
My police car. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
Therefore, nobody's going to perfect the world. Nobody's going to do anything to try to perfect the world. I think there's a superhero who's going to come and do it.
Don't worry. When Mashiach comes, he'll make sure we perfect the world.
No, Mashiach is something that each individual has to take up on himself to bring Mashiach closer. Meaning,
Who said you have to bring Mashiach closer?
Who
Where
said?
did you get that from?
I'll tell you where I get it from. That's the point of creation. The point of
Where does it say that?
what?
Where does it say that?
It says that by Adam, no?
Where does it say about him?
It says by Adam that had he not eaten the apple, Mashiach will come.
Where does it say that? It says not in the sword.
Yes, it is. It says, if you look until Shabbat, Mashiach will come. So exactly.
What does it say about Mashiach? It doesn't say anything about Mashiach there.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
Where?
Yes, it does. I don't know.
It says the redemption, the world will achieve this purpose. It doesn't say Mashiach will
Okay,
come.
so how does the world?
Anyway, but that's not relevant. The point is not that Mashiach achieves the purpose.
He helps us.
We don't. Do we need him?
No, but that's the thing. Nobody's doing anything without him.
work for us.
Everybody's waiting for him to come.
So I understand. You just said we shouldn't have that attitude, and now you're saying we should have that
We
attitude.
should have the attitude of changing the world.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And not waiting for somebody else to do it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. If Mashiach doesn't come, he doesn't come.
But people have an idea there's a superhuman, superhero who's going to come and do everything by himself. And we just
Well, you sound like you like that idea.
I don't like the idea. I'm against the idea.
Okay. Fine. Yes.
There's, it's an amazing thing. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I've been here for a couple of days now, but talking about Mashiach coming. Yeah, maybe it was yesterday. I mean, I guess there's 2 points of view. Everybody obviously we wait for Mashiach every day. We anticipate it. We yearn for it. But there's a few years. Obviously, I think you said we don't really want a lot of the things that are going to happen with Mashiach. So I heard Rabbi Talber say yesterday and today. Our goal in the world is really Techiyas Amesi. When you think about it, there won't be any questions then. At least that seems to be the end. The problem with Mashiach, obviously we have to believe in it, but there's so many things that are going to still maybe be cloudy, at least at the very beginning, until Olam Haba happens. So it would seem like, to avoid all the controversy, I guess maybe just Techiyas Amesi, what do you call it?
It's the ultimate culmination. I think so. Yeah. It's cool. At least going to Ramban.
It seems a lot safer to kind of put dagation on that, whereas the problem with Lubavitch is go around there with these signs, Mashiach is coming, and this and that, and it's just something about it. It's just I don't know.
I'm going to get that. I will get that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, let's go back to. So I think the RCA is wrong, and I think that, and I didn't emphasize this enough last night because we didn't get seriously into it yet, but tonight you are. If you are a real card-carrying Lubavitcher, you have to believe the Rebbe's Mashiach. You really can't believe that anybody else is Mashiach, and I will explain why.
Wow.
So, we mentioned yesterday that in Hasidic thought in general, but very much more so in Lubavitch, there's the concept of the Yechida Klolis, the grand unifier, the entity, the individual who unifies the entire generation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other Hasidus, they don't necessarily believe we can identify Yechida Klolis of the generation. In contemporary Hasidus, they don't necessarily believe their Rebbes are Yechida Klolis, even of their own Hasidim. But in Lubavitch, they believe that their Rebbe in each generation was the Nasi Hador, meaning he's the Yechida Klolis of that generation.
Did this start with Baal Tanya? He's the one who brought this?
Rebbe, so the Baal Shem Tov.
The Baal Shem Tov?
Yeah.
But how did the Chabad get the idea of Baal Shem? How does the golden line to Baal Shem Tov?
The Rebbe saw the Baal Shem Tov, the Mezritcher Magid, and then it switches to the Alter Rebbe and goes down Lubavitch.
Alter Rebbe did not have any other students besides Lubavitch?
The Alter Rebbe?
Yeah.
He had many students.
So why is it?
Because they were the main line. They goes by the main trunk line in Lubavitch. There are many branches in Lubavitch, but they died out over time. So they don't exist anymore. Now, since that's the case, that the Lubavitcher believes that the Rebbe is Yechiel because of the generation. The Hasidic Sfarim, and again, this is not Lubavitch per se, this is generic, general Hasidus. I usually quote this from Reb Tzadok. In Hasidus, the belief is that Mashiach is the super Yechida Klolis. Meaning, he's not just the Yechida Klolis of his generation, but of all generations. What does that mean? It means every tikkun, every fixing, which wasn't made from the beginning of creation till the end of creation, Mashiach will come, and he will, as the grand unifier, make all those tikkunim. Not just for his door, but for all doros until his time. So that's Yechida Klolis, right? He's the Yechida Klolis, but not just of his generation, but rather of all of time. He brings everything to its ultimate completion and perfection. Now, just a second. This is a very simple logical equation. If you believe that there is, like many Bali Machshava say, although it's 100% clear, you don't really have to believe this, but most people believe that there's a candidate for Mashiach in every generation. I think it comes from Mechasim Sefer, it probably comes from earlier than that, but as a candidate for Mashiach in every generation. If Mashiach, the ultimate Mashiach, is to be the grand Yechida Klolis, so logic dictates that the person who in this generation is the Yechida Klolis already is going to turn out to be eventually, if that generation is worthy of Mashiach coming, the Mashiach in his generation. Who else would it be? It's got to be the Yechida, the candidate, the best and only candidate really, is the person who unifies already the entire generation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's just a question of expanding that definition to include prior generations. Now, then comes a big dilemma. The Rebbe passes away. What do? Who is now your Yechida Klolis? Who's now uniting your generation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? There's no Lubavitcher Rebbe.
We need a second coming.
What?
Second coming.
Okay, no, but now before he comes back, right? Even if he does come back, before he comes back, who's running the ship? Who's running the ship? Bad metaphor. Who's the captain of the ship? So the Rebbe himself dealt with this. The Rebbe himself, in the very first Sicha, or Maimer, I don't remember, it's a Sicha or Maimer, one of the first speeches he gave when he became Rebbe, he said an amazing Chiddush. A stunning Chiddush. He said, we normally have a general principle which goes, which is in sync with one of the Rambam's earlier Ikarim. Ikar number 5, if I recall correctly, you can only daven to Hashem and not to any other entity. And one of those entities you're now allowed to daven to is a dead person. But as Hasidim, says the Rebbe, we were all accustomed to going to the Rebbe, his father-in-law. By the way, the Rebbe never referred to himself as a Nasi Ador, he always referred to his father-in-law as a Nasi Ador, but okay.
He was going on, everyone thinks he's talking himself, like he's this, he's that, and then he'd say, my father-in-law, is that the way?
They interpret it as another. That's how they interpret it. So,
he was really alluding to himself.
That's what they say. I don't know if it was or wasn't, but that's what they say. Anyway, so he said, so what's going to be with, as Hasidim, till a year ago, he became Rebbe, a year after his father-in-law passed away, we always went to the Rebbe to ask him to give us brachas and to make for us all sorts of yeshuos and all sorts of good stuff happen. And now he's no longer with us. And we can't ask him anymore because he's dead. And we can't make requests of dead people. So
we could have, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Maybe you can have an influence, we can talk to,
Yeah, no, that you're allowed to do. You can ask a dead person to be a Melitz Yosher, to be an advocate for you in Shamayim. But the Rebbe went much further than that. The Rebbe said it seems to him, this is his own Chiddush, he didn't see it anywhere, but it seems to him, he said, that there are two types of intermediaries. There is a memutza ha-mechaber and a memutza ha-mafsik. There's an intermediary which connects and an intermediary which interrupts. Now, he said most intermediaries are interrupt. They are a barrier between you and Hashem. And therefore you're not allowed to daven to them. Because they are lower down, they're separate, they're separating between you and Hashem. You can't direct any request to them. But a Lubavitcher Rebbe, because he is, or was, and continues to be a Yechida Klolis, the grand unifier, so therefore, he's a Memutza HaMechaber, not a Memutza HaMafsik. An intermediary which connects, not one which separates. Wow. So therefore, you can make requests of him. Because requests to him are not as if you're making a request to an intermediary in the standard sense, because since he's directly connected to God, and he connects us to God, so therefore we can make requests of him, even though he passed away. This was obviously, it didn't get much press at the time, because if it did, it would be, maybe it did actually, I don't know, wasn't around the early 50s, but I don't think there were so many people paying attention that it got much press. But this is a shocking chiddush. Nobody's ever said it before in this Klal. But that does resolve a critical problem. What that means is that even once a Rebbe is nifter, okay, so when the previous Rebbe was nifter, they still had his son-in-law, the last Rebbe. But what happens when a Rebbe is nifter and doesn't have a successor? Not a problem. Who continues to be a Yechida Klolis? The Rebbe. Why he doesn't have to be alive to be a Yechida Klolis. That was the Rebbe's Chiddush in his first Sicha. Or you can be dead. And that's why Lubavitchers continue when they have Shilas to go to take the Igros Kodesh, to take the letters and leaf through the letters to get an answer from the Rebbe what to do. Because the Rebbe continues to be the Yechida Klolis of the generation.
Can I ask a question?
1 second. Just one more. So therefore, the Rebbe remains the Yechida Klolis. Therefore, the Rebbe remains until such time as there's another Lubavitch Rebbe, which doesn't seem to be in the cards. He remains the only candidate, or the best candidate, I should say, the most likely candidate to be Mashiach. And if you're a Lubavitcher, all this makes perfect sense, and you really don't have a choice but to believe the Rebbe is Mashiach. It's very difficult to go with Lubavitch theology as it stood during the time of the last Rebbe and not hold that the Rebbe is Mashiach. It's compelling. Yeah.
Just one question. First, how many of the Lubavitchers actually understand this principle or actually aware of this principle? Like, how many of them actually know that this
Not so many.
So it's only the top few.
It's, the high, more than you think, but not so many.
So an evaluation of the whole Chabad, we'll say about 10%, 20%?
No, I would say it's more than that. I would say it's more like 30 or 40%.
But you won't say that the new Baal Teshuva...
No, the Baal Teshuva, it's just, rah, 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 the Rebbe is my man, something like that. And this is much more sophisticated.
Second question would be, by Shaul and David, we see that Shaul was the original progeny of the kingship, but then was taken away from him and given over to David. So why can we say that we see that since Rabbi did not have any kids, and even though he did have this good Hiddush, but it's not precedent in any Hazal previously, so maybe we could make an assumption that they probably had the super Hiddush policy in their line, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to give it to somebody else for whatever reason. Well,
there are two reasons why I wouldn't say that. One of them is that it doesn't have to do with having kids. Each Rebbe, this goes back to what we said yesterday, each Rebbe has an Ibur Neshama from the previous Rebbes. Okay, so that means each Rebbe gets it from the previous Rebbes, regardless of whether he's a blood relative or not. Right? And besides that, there are many thousands of descendants of the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe alive today. So the fact that this Rebbe had no kids doesn't prove anything. Okay, it could go anyway. If anything, it proves there shouldn't be another Rebbe.
No, but the fact that there was no kids, and the fact that there was no progeny left to give over this Hebrew Neshama, like we're saying, right? It shows to us that maybe God decided this is not a line. This should be another line.
But He didn't give us another one. There's nobody who rose to the fore.
Not in Chabad, maybe somewhere else.
But that will if you're a Lubavitcher, you can't believe that the Belzer Rebbe is going to be your Rebbe now.
Okay, so
In Belz, they don't believe that the Kloisenberg Rebbe is going to be their Rebbe. In Kloisenberg, they don't believe that the Skver Rebbe is their Rebbe.
let's speak about the Rebbe.
We don't do that. It's not. Yeah, but
So you could be still.
it happens. Me and Lubavitcher connect. They're tied together. But
So I'm saying maybe that broke off. Maybe that broke.
yeah, so that you have no raya that way. So if you no raya that way, you assume the chazaka. The lumdus remains the chazaka. Yeah,
So all this sounds very logical.
it is.
Why are the Lubavitchers constantly ridiculed for these beliefs? Sounds like what they're saying is perfectly fine. It could all be.
It's no, there's nothing irrational with the belief, and were it not done in such a in-your-face type way, it wouldn't be a problem. But the problem is that they do it in a really aggressive manner. In other words, they want you also to believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach, even though you don't subscribe to this theology.
That's another question I have. So, according to Lubavitch thought, this is a rational line of reasoning, and then outside of Lubavitch thought, they have another line of reasoning.
Right.
Both of them could possibly be true.
Right.
So why doesn't everyone accept everyone's point of view until they find out which one's right?
We did that. Mashiach would be here already. That's exactly the point.
Rabbi, can you just repeat this question? Can you just repeat guys one more time?
Why can't everybody live and let live, basically?
Why can everyone?
Live and let live. All viewpoints are valid. They are internally consistent.
You do your thing, I'll do my thing.
Yeah.
Will Chabad accept another Mashiach? If Mashiach does come, will they accept him?
I don't know.
I'm
See,
saying.
I'm sure HaKadosh Baruch Hu has tools to make everybody accept Mashiach.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll be in big trouble.
I'm just saying intellectually, though.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't prove someone right or someone wrong, every logical argument is valid until you can prove it. So why does everyone get so crazy?
Yeah, but not because of Mashiach. See, but the other things about Lubavitch, which I haven't, which tie into this. For example, when a Lubavitcher boy becomes bar mitzvah, they say things like you grow up and be a nachas ruach to your parents and to the Rebbe, right, and to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the nachas ruach to the Rebbe. There's certain things which are strange, great on other people's ears. And there's some who go very, very far and say that the Rebbe was a divinity, not Hashem, but divine.
That's clearly a mistake, I believe. That's an error.
Yes.
But I mean, if it is...
But again, if you're an outsider, it's very hard for you to distinguish between the points of view. There's a very... Obviously, I hope I've explained in a way that the differences are obvious. Yeah. But most people don't perceive that. Most people don't go with a scalpel; they go with a bludgeon.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Not being, considered for having any strong.
No, you could have fooled me.
Leading, yeah. So this, if you could address this issue, I don't know, is and it's all intellectually fascinating. But what I would really be interested in is what are we in the quote misnagdim?
I'm going to get there. I'm getting there.
Can you?
I'm getting there.
I really want to know what does Rabbi Schwab say? What's the Nefesh Chaim say?
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I was in.
Well, actually, let's. Yeah.
He said that they have a valid point, we have a valid point. Isn't there straight out halachic, like bottom line clause?
No, this is all.
That the Chabad belief goes against that. No, it's totally legit.
No, it's all. These are not like Hilchos Shabbos. There's no chayav chatos, mutter, potter. This is Rambam himself says we don't know what's going to happen until it happens. We really shouldn't be concerned with this. Yeah. That's another issue which we're going to come to. As if you're a misnaged, you're not supposed to care about this.
Rashad's whole outtake, what was the fire response from Rashad and other G'dor against this Yichid movement? If it doesn't go against any halachic,
because it was
guidelines, what's the big deal?
Because it was drawing. The Rebbe had a very charismatic and magnetic personality, and Lubavitch was a very hopping and bopping and exciting movement. Lots of yeshiva bachrim were falling for it. So
it's all politics.
What?
It's all politics.
Oh, it's
falling for. When you say falling for, what do you mean?
They were coming to the Lubavitchers.
So what's wrong with that?
If you don't believe it's true, then you don't want people becoming Lubavitchers, do you? You don't want your best and brightest Talmidim becoming something which you don't believe is true.
Not your minhag. Why would you switch?
Especially because it entails really.
You're switching over.
changing, a significant change.
it's a change.
It's not just like instead of being a Yek, being a Litvak, or instead of being a Moroccan, being Iraqi. This is a life change.
No, but what's if they, let's say they become Lubavitch, but they didn't become Mishachis, then I don't see a problem with that.
They are still cutting themselves off from Lubavitchers. Lubavitchers don't learn for the most part in mainstream yeshivas. Lubavitchers, for the most part, don't have a positive relationship with non-Lubavitchers. There's a whole friction out there, which is traumatic.
Do you think the same friction is true? Like, I wouldn't say people become Breslov, but let's say like that's the other big movement out there now.
Right.
Now a lot of people turn.
Right. So the reason why they don't oppose Breslov the same way, I once asked this to I had a chavrusa who was when I was in the Meir, when I was learning as a bacher. So I had chavrusa who was in Koilo, very chosh v'yung man. So a member of the one of the royal families in Israel. So I asked him why Rav Shach is against Lubavitch and not against Breslov.
Well,
And he told me a normal, talented yeshiva guy will be attracted to Lubavitch. He won't be attracted to Breslov.
A normal town. Why?
Because it's kooky.
Why is it cookie?
Breslov?
Why? Explain to me why it's why. Why?
Because you go dancing in the streets and you don't really learn.
One second.
It's a very happy movement. I have nothing wrong with being happy. But it's
1 minute.
the Litvish yeshiva bacher doesn't see happiness as a big value.
1 minute. I have a question. 1 second. Those are okay, but that's the thing. But the only reason people say that is because there are some crazy guys that go dancing in the street. But
Right.
if you really read the books and you read there are certain books, you can't tell me that there's something wrong with that. It's changed many people's lives, and they became huge learners because of it. They became very big Masiminim because of it.
Not people who are in Panovich.
I'm not talking people in.
But that's what Rav Shach is concerned about.
Okay, fine.
He's not concerned with some, BT or some Meir. He's concerned about the Panovichers. What?
I'm not saying even it's not a BT.
Whatever.
You're saying only Panovichers?
Chavra and Meir, the big issue is concerned with that.
I don't know. I'm just saying. I think some of their things is very pertinent to today's society.
I'm not disagreeing with you. And even Rav Shach wouldn't disagree with you. He'd say it's not a sakana. By the way, mainstream Breslov. So there is a mainstream Breslov. Mainstream Breslov is accepted as part of mainstream Judaism.
I know.
And they have very big Talmid Chachamim.
Right.
So that's okay, that Breslov.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, so fine, that's not a problem. We're talking about Nanach.
Oh,
Yes. I thought, we're talking on two different planes here.
Oh, that's
Okay.
Now, is there the same thing with Lubavitch too? They're like the keys and then is it just not on the same level really? Like Breslov, there's like the Nana, mainstream Breslov.
Yes.
Is there mainstream?
There is mainstream Chabad. It's much smaller than it used to be, but there is some mainstream Chabad. And that's where the danger actually lies. Because even the mainstream Chabad is separatist. Yeah.
I was over this Chabad next to us, and then with this newsletter I was reading, so they were telling a story. I didn't read the whole story, just the beginning that threw me off a little bit. It says about how this peasant, like a regular farmer, a Hasid, wants to see the Rebbe, I guess once a year that he goes to see the Rebbe, and like a whole 2 or 3 a month in advance before he goes to see the Rebbe, this is how he wake up in the morning, and he would fast, and he would daven, and he would go to mikvah every day, just to go to the visit. And his kids also do the same thing. Like the whole family went into a whole preparation, a spiritual cleansing of their neshama just to go see the Rebbe. When I just read that 2 paragraphs, it sort of threw me off to some extent that I understand Rebbe is a Rebbe, but he puts more preparation into seeing the Rebbe than maybe into Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av. I don't know what, but it sounds like going to mikvah, fasting, and I don't know, maybe doing whatever it is that he's doing over there. Is that normal? That makes you
Not anymore. Once upon a time, yeah.
But this is a newsletter right now. I mean, this is what.
Yeah, but they're quoting a story from 200 years ago, right?
Yeah, but if the Rebbe is alive to some extent, this is what they want to look.
I want you to tell you. I was once in Crown Heights, 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was, and I was standing outside 770 with the whole crowd waiting for the Rebbe to come out, and everybody's standing there. Finally, the Rebbe walks out the door. He had his very unique, brisk walk, and everybody runs back. All the people lined up. They were lined up the whole time. they all run back in fright. I'm embarrassed to say that I also ran back with everybody else. Yes.
You do it.
What?
You were pushed back or you ran back?
No, I ran back. One lady, one Sephardi lady who really wanted a bracha, she went up front. She's, she stood her ground. She's, she said she wants a bracha. The Rebbe gave her a bracha. But everybody else who had been waiting there that whole time, and just ran back in fright. So so you see that even to this day, and I'm sure that things were similar by the old Satmar Rebbe and other Rebbes of the older generation. Yeah, there was this aima from the Rebbe.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's all going to mikvah every...
No, so not going to the mikvah.
Fasting and...
Maybe that's why we all ran back, because we didn't go to the mikvah. But obviously there are the things we don't do anymore. But still, and that's a good. It's not a bad thing. It's not such a bad thing. When I first went to Ner Yisrael, so in 1981, so my cousin who was in the kollel there at the time, my older cousin, took me over to introduce me to Rabbi Ruderman. So it was a big mistake, because Ruderman asked me what I learned this past year. I said Masechah Sanhedrin. So he said, all Masechah Sanhedrin? So I said, yes. So he proceeded to give me a bechina on all Masechah Sanhedrin, which I failed dismally. I remember only one question from the bechina, which is, how do we community right from Masechah Sanhedrin that a meis akum, a non-Jewish corpse, is mutar bahana, allowed to derive benefit from a goy who is dead? And the answer was, there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin which says, I did not get this answer, that David, when he was Mekadesh, Michal Bas Shaul, when he married her by giving, what? Right, 100 orlos from Plishtim. So therefore we see that Mutzah Ba'anoah, because otherwise it wouldn't be Shavar Pruta. They have to be worth a Pruta in order to serve as Kiddushin. Anyway, so he kept on saying to my cousin, I was in a fourth year shiur, so he kept saying to my cousin, maybe you shouldn't be in a fourth year shiur, maybe you should go out to Rav Kolevsky, a 30-year shiur for a while. So anyway, my cousin later got flack because he brought me over and I wasn't wearing a jacket.
Ooh.
So you see, there is, we're very easygoing in our circles nowadays, but it's not. It's in our circles. I mean, a place like Or Sameach, but or of course in a place like MTA where I teach, there's B'chlal, no such concept as Ema from a Rebbe. But once upon a time there was such a thing, and even today, very not the same way it was back then, but certainly.
But would the preparation for Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah be better than the preparation?
Maybe not, but the Rebbe is, the Yom Kippur is an abstract concept. Okay. The Rebbe is a holy person who's in front of you. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, short. Shachner Lublin, the Rebbe and the father-in-law of Ramo.
Yeah.
He believed in his life that he is a Mashiach.
Yeah.
And he said the pasuk in Dvorim, "Leshichno tidreshu v'asashamo, leshachne tidreshu." So there were in tzaddikim generations that they believed istamidim that it can be.
Right.
Another point, I met in Eretz Yisrael the leader of the Mashiachism, and I asked him, I'm outsider, can you explain to me, how do you believe? What is... So he told me, I have a pshat to... When he was alive, would you believe that he can be a Mashiach? I said, maybe, candidate. He said, when he was sick, it can still be. I said, yes, when Mashiach comes, all the sick people will be well, so maybe. So what is the change that he died? He said, will be Tchias HaMesim. So I told him, yeah, but in Tchias HaMesim there will be other candidates. Moshe Rabbeinu, this he didn't have what answers.
Right, so I'm answering that. According to Lubavitch, since the Rebbe was the Yechida Klolis of his door, and each Lubavitch Rebbe gets an Ibur Neshama of the Yechida Klolis of the previous door, so the last Lubavitch Rebbe was the greatest human being who ever lived.
Wonderful.
Moshe Rabbeinu is higher in Nevuah. That's for sure. Everybody will be Moida. But in terms of greatness of being a Yechida, the last Lubavitch Rebbe.
Last week was a meeting of 5,000 Shlichim of Chabad. I spoke with one of them. He said all of the 5,000 they don't believe in the Mashiachism. At the same time, the others made also their gathering, very low numbers. Most of them, this is what the official position.
Yeah, but
maybe inside, I don't know what they see inside.
Right, I don't know either, but they do have internal directives. I don't know what the numbers are. They do have internal directives not to raise the Mashiach issue because it's bad for fundraising. But also, what they define internally in Chabad as Mashiachist is not what we would define as Mashiachist. The ones who they call Mashiachistin in a negative way are the ones who still say Yechi and the Rebbe Shlita, and believe the Rebbe was never Nifter. The mainstream, they believe the Rebbe was Nifter, and he's not alive at the moment, but that doesn't mean he's not the Mashiach. So the Machlek Shemishchistin, not Mashiachistin is, now, is he alive, and just, on vacation, or on hiatus, or in hiding, or is it, or now is dead, but eventually he's coming back. There are very few Yechidim in Lubavitch who believe that the Rebbe was Nifter, and that therefore he's not Mashiach, somebody else is going to be Mashiach. There are very few of those.
How come the system of questions it works? How come?
What?
The system of questions, putting in the egos, it works.
How do you know? Nobody made a scientific study. There's no way of knowing. You know of all the success stories. Right. You don't know of all the stories where they got divorced afterwards. Yeah. The Rebbe told my mother to marry my father. It was a rotten marriage. It lasted 20-some-odd years when I was born. That's an advantage for me. But, it was not a good marriage, and they got divorced afterwards. We know, so even the Rebbe himself, okay, maybe, but they're fallible. You just hear the success stories, not the non-successful stories. Although I think I'm the greatest success ever, but that's not, I don't think my mother thinks that, so maybe she does.
What if two people were supposed to get married to each other and have a bad marriage? That was part of their tikkun in life,
Yeah, but the Rebbe, you're right, but the Rebbe usually when he gives advice, we're assuming that he gives advice as to what's going to be good for you, and not just in a abstract sense, but in a actual experience. Because he gives a whole bracha when he consents to the marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't understand, if someone classifies themselves as a Lubavitch or whatever, anything else, why do they have to accept, the line of reasoning, this reasoning that the Rebbe is Mashiach, or...
They don't. In the old days, there were many Lubavitchers who didn't. But nowadays, Lubavitch has become so much identified with this, that it becomes... almost impossible for somebody, even internally, to come out completely against this. In other words, there's a certain social pressure to adhere to this because it's become the overwhelming benchmark accepted position. You don't have to. You could still be, an old-time Lubavitcher who liked the Rebbe but didn't hold that the Rebbe was divine or infallible or anything like that. There were plenty of Lubavitchers of that like that. So the 60s and 70s, there are lots of them. Then it started diminishing.
What if somebody didn't believe it and they're in Lubavitch, but they're afraid to leave for whatever reason?
So then they'll become a Lubavitcher Marano. I'm sure there are lots of those too.
I'm just saying, like in Crown Heights, where it's all Lubavitchers, and your whole family is this, and your friends are this, and you're just afraid.
Of course, all Hasidus has that. You think all the people who live in Monroe are very happy to live in Monroe? All the people who live in Square happy to live in Square? No, they're not. They're just that's. I know from my colleague who tells me. But they're in the system, so of course it's too hard to buck the system once you're in it.
Right. But what you're saying is, if you do associate yourself and live amongst the Lubavitchers or the square or the...
You have to walk the walk, talk the talk, and walk the walk.
You have, it's very hard for you to, it's very hard for you not to believe it based on social pressures, but... Right.
It's very hard among Misnagdim. If you want to live among Misnagdim, and you want to say that maybe Rav Yosef is not the Gadol Hador, you might get stoned.
Could I say that?
What?
Could I say that?
Why, because you're Sephardi?
Yeah.
You're entitled. Yes. But if you go to a Sephardi place and say Rav Avadia is not the Gadol Hador, then they'll stone you. Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, do you see then, because of that, a possible rise in non-denominational Hasidut?
No, actually, I don't see much rise in non-denominational Hasidus.
But
You have to think about as lahavdil. You have to think about as baseball.
okay.
It's much more fun to be a fan of a team than to just watch baseball games.
Okay.
So people like being fans.
Right, but I mean, there are a good amount of people that are obviously discontent with the system, and there are people that do. I have heard of people in Muncie that have made the switch between being vigilant and square.
Yeah, but
it happens rarely, but it happens.
right, but it's a small minority because part of the fun of Hasidus is being part of a team.
Right. So just don't
Yeah.
see change in that. No.
Rav Shach,
You would switch teams, but not.
No such thing. Not,
Yeah.
you said before Rav Shach you're saying his thing. The only reason he was against the Bible was because Bachman were becoming Chabad.
The main reason. I'm not saying the only reason. The main reason.
Now, would he be against? Would he be against? It's like at the end of the day, a lot of people became frum because of that. Would anybody say that?
He would be perfectly fine with them going out and making fried people from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay.
No, but
So they're all over the world.
Sounds like
I mean,
his main thing was that already current from yeshiva buffers from Panovich going and switching their
Right.
their minhagim, not new Baal Shul.
Right.
I would say also a lot of people that became religious through Chabad. I would say the percentage has to be high. That a lot of them are not Chabad.
Absolutely.
I would say probably a lot of them came from, and then they went back to their.
I hope nothing I said tonight was construed as being against Chabad. I'm not against Chabad. Some of my closest relatives are Lubavitchers.
You're only saying because you're on video and you
Yeah.
get a lot of backlash.
Well, besides the video and the backlash, what I just said, which is true, besides that, some of my closest relatives are Lubavitchers. My grandfather and grandmother were Lubavitchers, many of my aunts and uncles. My mother's Lubavitch sympathizer. That's called cousins. I'm related to, I think, almost all Lubavitchers in the world, some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
I know you already explained this, but what was the big deal? Why did Rav Shach have such a problem with yeshiva bachar?
Did he call them Russian?
Like, what's the big deal about that?
The what?
That yeshiva bachar were becoming Lubavitchers.
Rav Shach believed that the Misnagdik Yeshiva way of life was the ideal, best, and most rewarding way of life for its adherents. And he was against any other movement or sector of society which would take people away from that. It happens to be most sectors of society were not a threat to that. By the way, the Litva, to put all the cards on the table, the Litvish yeshivas are the last bastion of racism, right? It's not a secret. Litvish yeshivas will not accept more than a very small quota of Sephardim. Does everybody know that?
No,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Why?
Wait, Ner Yisrael thing's an exception.
What?
Ner Yisrael?
Ner Yisrael is an exception.
Maybe there's no exception then because they're on the fringe of the yeshiva. They allow college too, so they're already puzzled. But the real, so to speak, mainline yeshivas, there are strict quotas on Sephardim. We don't want to water down the whatever, the elitist or society. What?
What's the rationale?
It's because Sephardim are not, that won't fit properly into Litvish yeshiva.
I heard the reason
Because they'll
why.
question who the Gadol.
Whatever, many reasons.
I heard the main reason, I for sure, and I think it's true. I don't know in America, but first of all, I don't think in America, I think yeshivas are much more lenient than they are in Israel. Israel, I think, is a different ballgame. In Israel, I think the main reason they didn't let Sfardim, and it's changing a lot now. There are a lot of Sfardim getting into the big yeshivas, and then I think the main reason before that they didn't let them in was because they had this assumption for some stupid reason that if you were Sephardi, that meant you were Mizrahi and weren't Haredi, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, but
That was a lot of the big reason, but it's certainly changed now, and there are a lot. I'm saying you go to Israel, it's probably not as good as it maybe should be, but I think it's still it's.
Once upon a time, Litvish yeshivas, they didn't even let Hasidim in.
No, of course not.
Okay, anybody who didn't shave, they didn't let into the yeshiva. So we're very very racist, the Litvaks. And now there's so much. I heard today for the Maisa of a guy who's a Sephardi guy. I know him, who learns in the Litvish yeshivas and speaks Litvish, and so he So actually, I knew his name. I knew his name back in the yeshiva. Let's say this is not his name, but let's say his name was back then Kasim. So now he changed his name, and he changed his name to something like Cohen. Yeah, Kasinovich. Right, exactly.
Oh my God.
So he had to go as a Morano into the Litvish. He had to job in the Litvish yeshiva. He couldn't, he didn't want to jeopardize that by keeping that Sephardi name. So he changed it. Amazing.
So funny.
Okay.
A lot of us grew up in these public schools, and they tell us that racism. They have these $5 million campaigns that tell us that racism is bad.
It is.
I know, but I'm just saying, and then
culturally,
we come Balchuva, and we find out that racism is in.
Right. Racism is alive and well in the Orthodox community. Us in the Deep South. Yeah.
Would the yeshiva system discriminate against
Maybe cheaper
Kala?
down there.
Bro, would the yeshiva system discriminate against Kala?
Against who?
Kala.
Color.
Of course they would.
What was
But there are not enough people, the pool is not big enough for there to be an issue. But let's say, even Chabad will not take Ethiopians.
Why not?
They say they're not sure they're really Jewish. But Lamaisa, they don't take them.
Well, there's a problem. Meir Moshe said
Yeah.
there's a problem.
Or they said that Chabad, what Chabad said that the Ethiopians
They
are not
don't, yeah.
You're not Jewish.
They are not Jews.
What?
They are not Jews. I'm from Israel, and I know a lot of Ethiopians that they claim that they are Jews, but they have tattoo cross on their forehead.
I'm not saying there aren't Ethiopians who aren't Jewish. Of course there are. But there are Ethiopians. The Sephardim, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef certainly accepts ones who believe in Judaism as Jews. And there are, I think that, I'm not 100% sure, I shouldn't really say this, I take it back, but it seems to me, from what I heard, that they're hiding behind the fact they're not Jewish and that they don't want to take the Ethiopians. In other words, it's a good excuse. Maybe I'm wrong, I really shouldn't say.
I would actually think it probably is.
What?
Because I heard that either, there's a problem with the Ethiopians in one of two ways. Either they're all not Jewish or they're mamzers.
Right. No, it's certainly to their advantage being not Jewish.
Right.
But I don't think Lubavitch is trying to, all right, never mind. I shouldn't say this. I know for a fact. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah. I take it back.
Can I ask a question on
Yes.
this?
I take it back. Sorry.
Is it possible in Chabad system?
Let's,
Just a question about Rav Shach.
we haven't done the Misnagdish system at all. Tomorrow. Tomorrow.
His opinions towards Lubavitch. It sounds like from how you described Rav Shach's opinions that someone could question Rav Shach and say, sound kind of discriminatory. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it than, just, if you don't like my way, then we should, persecute you or whatever. But why don't people question Rav Shach's views as to,
Being tyrannical.
why you have to accept his way of doing things or
Who should question it?
just everyone.
Nobody's going to question Rav Shach, that's why.
Right. I mean,
Rav Shach was a very vocal. Rav Shach was a very vocal leader. The ones who weren't so vocal, Shlomo Zalman and others, they weren't so. They didn't have that same kanos. But Rav Shach, that was his. He was Eish Lahava, fire and brimstone. That was his personality.